Welcome to The Cross in the Classroom, Educating with Eternal Values, the podcast where faith and education come together. Join us every 2 weeks as we connect with the inspiring voices of Valor Christian High School, teachers, students, and leaders, sharing stories of growth, purpose, and the eternal values that guide our community. We're glad you're here.
On this episode of The Cross in the Classroom, host Toby Coffman and his guest, Dr. Kristine Wolberg, dive into the changing landscape of higher education, especially as it relates to Christian faith and formation. Drawing on decades of experience in both secular and faith-based academic settings, Dr. Wolberg reflects on her personal journey from pre-med student to English professor and the unique challenges and opportunities that await students after high school. The conversation explores why the college years are so formative, how the culture of a university can make all the difference in a student's spiritual and personal development, and practical advice for families navigating the big question: does it really matter if your child attends a Christian, secular, public, or private university? Along the way, they address common myths, share personal stories, and offer practical steps for parents guiding their kids into this new season. Whether you're a parent, educator, or even a student, this candid discussion is packed with insight on preparing the next generation, not just to survive, but to thrive in college and beyond. Let's get started.
Dr. Wolberg, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure always to get to talk to you, even in an environment like this. And I was thinking on my walk over here just now that we have now known each other for 12 years, which is a little bit wild. I was 29 years old when we met each other, and you can leave your age out if you would prefer. But I was applying to Valor to teach English, and I read everyone's faculty bio on the faculty page, and here was this woman who had a PhD from Notre Dame and had written books on George Herbert. And I just remember thinking, there is no way I'm capable of working with people at this high of a level. And so such a wonderful thing to watch you in action and hear your passion. And we're here today to talk about one of those primary passions for you, which is Christian education beyond high school at the college level. But before that, I'd love it if you could just take a minute to introduce yourself to people, who you are, your background academically, how you wound up at Valor, and what you do here now.
Well, thank you for that kind introduction, Toby. It's been a pleasure working with you. My background is not straightforward as far as education goes. I started out, believe it or not, as a pre-med student, as many students do. My father's a veterinarian, and it just seemed a natural path for me to take. So I started out at Houghton College, and after 2 years, realized that wasn't for me. I went on to a school in England, and then came back to the States. Went to Wheaton College to finish my undergrad. Went to Western Kentucky University for a master's in humanities, and did my English PhD at Notre Dame. Since then, I've had the privilege of teaching for Western Kentucky, teaching for Notre Dame, teaching for Houghton College, and teaching for CCU here locally for 10 years or so, part-time, and a little bit of full-time work there. And the reason I mention all these schools is that I feel like the Lord has helped me to see by going to almost every kind of school you can go to, secular schools, private schools, state schools, a Catholic school, and so I've seen it from both sides, as a student and as a teacher, and that I guess leads me up to working for Valor. My son was a freshman here when the school opened, and they had an opening for an English teacher, and I thought, I'll give it a go, not thinking I'd just be here for a year, and here I am. 17 or so years later, but I love it here because I love the community of the faculty and staff. I love our student population. Many come not knowing Christ, not having a church background, and leave knowing Him. And it's such a delight to share faith with these students. And high school students, I think, are uniquely open-minded to the gospel and reevaluating their core beliefs. And it's just a pleasure to get to interact with them and share my faith with them, as well as my love for literature.
Well, great. Yeah, our students have benefited from that for a long time. And my mind is reeling on the fact that you didn't start at Wheaton College, because when I think of you, I associate you with Wheaton.
Yeah,
and I think
that's
there's
right,
a good word in there for our students too, that where you begin is not necessarily where you'll end up.
Yes.
And there's different steps along this journey, which is really cool. So let's dive into more college specific questions. So you've been around this game for a long time now, and how has the collegiate landscape changed during your time in the field?
Yes, I would say it's changed drastically in many ways. One way, of course, is financially. It's very expensive to get a good education, and all the more reason for parents and students to think deeply about this choice. Also, I would say culturally, it's changed. We have so many universities and colleges now are very, shall we say, liberal. And this is not just hearsay. I mean, there are studies. There's a New York Times article that came out recently saying something like 12. There's a 12-to-1 ratio of liberal administrators of colleges and universities versus conservatives, and in the teaching faculty, something like only 3% would identify as conservative, and even less as Christian. Mm-hmm. So there's that cultural element, which trickles down, obviously, to students. Students are at a college and university in person because they want to learn from the faculty. And so they do learn. And we see things like on the Ivy League campuses recently, the pro-Palestine protests and such. And without getting into politics at all, I would say that that's a clear indicator of how influential the faculty and staff are at a college and university. Also, sadly, and I'm speaking here mostly of secular colleges and universities, the incidence of alcohol-related injuries and abuses and assaults and so on has risen. Sadly, many students leave college as alcoholics. Because another statistic that I've read recently is something like 25 to 30% of all students binge drink regularly on secular campuses. In addition to that, we see students who are challenged increasingly for their Christian beliefs and conservative values. If they're on campus, they often feel like they can't speak their minds. They can't share what they believe is true because they feel as if they're harassed. And I've actually had former students come and tell me, I felt like I had a target on my back because I mentioned C.S. Lewis in an English class, because I opened my Bible in my dorm room, and they felt persecuted there. And so these trends are very sad to see. Most of these colleges and universities, especially the old ones out east, their mottos say, Christ is our anchor, or we're here for truth, that sort of thing. And these things have eroded over the years. So I've seen these things sadly get more and more inhospitable to Christians and conservatives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you've long had a passion for, as I mentioned at the beginning, Christian collegiate education, that the formation that takes place in K through 12 is not done magically when someone turns 18 and they're just ready to go out and face the world. And so putting ourselves in just a question a family might ask along these lines is, does it really matter whether my child attends a Christian school or a secular school? They have a good faith background. They know who they are in Christ. Does it really matter what type of college they go to? How do you begin answering that? I know that the full answer to that is contextual and nuanced, but what's kind of your initial response to that?
Well, my first question, I'd ask a question back and say, do you want your student to thrive? Do you want your student's faith to thrive? Or do you want them just to merely survive? Mm-hmm. And every parent will say, of course, I want my student's faith to thrive. And so then I would ask them to think about the culture. The three most important things about students' happiness on a campus, the suitability, their fit, are culture. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes students will say, oh, I just want to go to a big university and be anonymous. But what we often find is many of those students will be transferring out after one semester because people want to be known. They want to be seen, they want to be known, and they want to feel at home. And so I ask students and parents to think, what do you want your home to be like? Because college is going to be your home for the next 4 years. And where will you feel at peace, comfortable? Where will you find your people? And so there are two sort of components to this. One is residence life, because most of the students do live on campus. And residence life at a Christian college or university is not just about keeping students safe and following the rules. And I know firsthand because I'm familiar with some residence life folks at all kinds of schools, that for a secular college or university, residence life is just kind of keeping you alive. And one of the things I should have mentioned with your last question is another trend I see is a sexualization of the university campus. And at secular campus, I have students who graduated last year come back and tell me this year, everybody's just has sex in their dorm rooms, and the RAs condone it. In fact, they have condoms on their door, and the attitude is, hookup culture is okay. Mm-hmm. And I think most of our families, most of our students would not agree with that and would not feel comfortable in that kind of environment. And not to dwell on the negatives, I would say residence life in a Christian college is one of the key blessings of a Christian education, because your RAs are there, as I said, not just to keep you alive and keep you following the rules, but they're there to help you thrive as a Christian. They set up Bible studies. They have interdorm social mixing things. Lots of fun stuff goes on, but it's in the context where sexuality is considered sacred and something worth waiting for. And so you don't have that pressure of the hookup culture that we see in so many campuses. So that student element of the student life element, I think, is really important. Bigger than we think. Very few people actually think about that. But that's your life. That's your home.
Yeah, they think
that's
about classes and professors,
exactly,
but you're
and
living
majors,
in a dorm most
exactly,
of the time.
Yeah. It's such a big part of your life. But also, in addition to that, I would say if you want to thrive in the classroom, why don't you go someplace where you feel like your beliefs are going to be not denigrated, not made fun of, but rather informed, challenged in a positive way, like iron sharpens iron, scriptures say. Both staff and students function this way. I remember when I first went to Wheaton, meeting missionary kids from all over the world, and the depth of their spirituality really challenged me. And also students from many different church backgrounds, again, really challenged me in ways I hadn't thought of before. I hear sometimes students say, I don't want to go to a Christian college because it's just like a bubble like Valor. And I really reject that idea. First of all, I don't think Valor is a bubble. Christianity is not a bubble. A bubble is something that easily pops. Christianity is bedrock truth, right? And Valor, seeks to stand on that truth. And the same thing with a Christian college. There are people from all kinds of different backgrounds. And so it's not a case that that we need to protect our faith. No, we need to challenge our faith and grow our faith. And that does happen in a Christian college and university. So professors bringing you information, typically you need to take Bible classes, theology classes. These will challenge you and help you to grow, but in a safe way. And so that the teaching from the front of the room is so important. As much as students might protect and build their faith by belonging to parachurch organizations on a secular campus, what you can never get in a secular university is that faith-oriented instruction from the front of the room. I know a lot of Valor parents of course they all do, they want their students to thrive. They want them to have a profession. They want them to learn skills. But I think one thing that for most Valor parents is true is that we care more about who our student is becoming, who our student is, than the skills and the even perhaps the knowledge they might pick up. So do you want your student to thrive, or do you want them just to survive, to hang on by their fingernails and struggle both in residence life and in the classroom? I think Christian colleges and universities are very compelling in those areas.
Yeah, I read an article once by a guy he had taught at UVA, University of Virginia, then went to Wheaton and then to Baylor from there. And he talked about the stereotype that Christian schools are going to be more restrictive in terms of academic freedom. He said he found the opposite, that he was actually able to explore things once he moved to a Christian environment that he couldn't at UVA. That you actually that's the bubble. You're actually operating in a pretty confined range of what's acceptable thought,
what's allowable. Yeah.
So shift gears just slightly. I think we'll kind of come back to some of this. The statistics are pretty bad when it comes to kids retaining their faith once they go to college. This is a kind of a multi-part question. Why do you think students raised in Christian homes are prone to drift in college? And how does attending a Christian college address the issues that arise in that season of life? And I'm going to piggyback on that with another, because this is a question that I've had, because Christian colleges have better outcomes. Their kids maintain faith, they into adulthood, past college. My question has always been, how much of that is self-selection? The kids who, faith is so important to me, I'm going to prioritize going to a Christian school. So naturally, those are going to be the kids who maintain their faith into their 30s and 40s and raise their kids in the faith, versus this was actually an effect of the Christian college that I attended. So, why are we prone? Why are so many college-age kids prone to drifting? And how do Christian colleges help that? Even for maybe some of the kids who are less, this is my one thing in life, is I really want to thrive in my faith. Right.
Yeah. So one thing I would say is that it's not just Christian kids who drift. Everybody drifts. And that's a normal and healthy part of growing up, is re-examining, what your parents taught you, what your church and schools taught you. And that's a healthy thing. And if we can, as often people say today, you got to deconstruct your faith. Well, that's fine. Look at your faith, look at what you've believed. But if you're in an environment where nobody can help you reconstruct it, you're not likely to come back to the faith. Yeah, and this is a scary thing for parents. They send their students off to schools, and in a Christian environment, you are encouraged to, especially as we've been mentioning, the many the various sort of backgrounds of the teachers and the faculty and the staff and the students. You are going to be challenged, but you're challenged in a Christian environment. You're challenged in a place where you can discuss things with people who actually take the Bible seriously and who are believing Christians themselves, and they can walk you through their own questions. And it's a safe environment to do that, and to grow and to be challenged along the way, as we mentioned earlier. So there's always drift, and drift is not necessarily, an unhealthy thing. As far as the second question goes, these students, they are self-selected, right? These are students who choose to go to a Christian environment. Well, all the better, right? Because because people who go to a state school or who are trying to maybe get away from their faith, that school is going to attract a certain kind of student, a certain kind of student body. And the Christian schools are obviously attracting people who take their faith seriously. Great. The Bible tells us, if you want to be wise, walk with the wise, right? In Corinthians, doesn't it say something like... bad company
corrupts
good morals.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they are self-selected.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I suppose it's impossible then to say, how many of them would have stayed with the faith anyway. Mm-hmm. I don't know if there's any way we can know that. Mm-hmm. But
we would need to track the same person making two opposite decisions, which we can't do.
Yeah. But I say, great for Christian colleges, because you have that self-selected community of people.
Well, we were talking about this before we even started recording, that college, and it's the professor, it's the major, it's the opportunities you have while you're there, the programming, the study abroad, all of that cool stuff. But at the end of the day, and I don't know if you're this way, but when I think back on my own college experience, I think about people. I think about the people that I did life with. And so kind of reflect on that. Like, what is, I think just make explicit what we've already been dancing around. Like, college, going to a Christian college puts you in proximity to the people who are going to be your people throughout life.
Yeah, indeed. My daughter, who also went to Wheaton College, just mentioned the other day, all the best people I know are Wheaton grads. Just kind of.
Was she asking you for money after she said that? Okay.
Yeah, no. And as it happens, my best friend today was my roommate at Wheaton College, and we were in contact at least weekly. Mm-hmm. Professors I had, and by the way, professors at Christian colleges, they want to get to know their students. Mm-hmm. They're not just students are not just a number. Many of the professors at Christian colleges could teach anywhere. Some of the best minds of our age are people who are absolute top scholars in their fields, and they choose to teach at Christian colleges. One reason is because they want to get to know their students. And I made some lifetime friends of my professors. One of my professors came to my daughter's wedding, and, we're in touch regularly. And that just doesn't happen, on a big secular university. People, that's really maybe the greatest asset, right, of a college or university, and of a Christian college or university. People who care in the residence life staff, as we've already mentioned, faculty, but also other students. There's a certain quality of believers. I mean, we know this, right? I mean, we're all sinners, of course, and we all make mistakes and mess up. But a community of the saints, of believers. We hopefully are better at loving one another. Mm-hmm. I mean, hopefully, right?
Yeah,
we are. And one interesting thing, in addition to making lifelong friends, people that you share your values with, you're more likely to, create a friendship.
Mm-hmm.
I read some research yesterday that said that something like 30% of all married college grads marry people that also graduated from their college or university. So if you're looking for, someone that shares your values to go through life together, I don't know a better place, a church or Christian college.
Well, we've even had several couples from Valor who grew up and stuck it out through college and got married. And when you talk to them, that's what they say. I knew he or she valued what I value, and that I share that in common. And even as I think on my own adulthood, the people from college that I've stayed the closest in touch with are the people who love Jesus and are teaching their kids to love Jesus and are passing on that faith. I'm still good friends with other people who don't have that, but the people I've really locked arms with in this life and would call if the awful news came, right? The people that I would call are the people who share that Christ is the center of their life. And so I think that's something we don't think about enough because, and this is transition to my next question, I think sometimes we get caught on the trap of prestige, and we want our kids to go to a college that's prestigious. And the metrics for measuring that can be a little bit flawed. It's the acceptance rate of a school and things like that, the pedigree, how much it's known or respected. But how would you respond if a parent's for sure, I want my kid to thrive in their faith, but I also want them to go to a great law school or medical school or something like that. That's their ambition. And can they get there if they go to this smaller Christian liberal arts school or something like that?
Yeah. Well, happily, the statistics do speak in favor of the top Christian schools. For example, for medical school acceptance, there are at least 3 Christian colleges that I believe Houghton is one. Maybe it's not Biola, but Valor, and perhaps Calvin. But I'd have to check that. I'll put some of these statistics in the notes. Have a significantly higher acceptance rate than almost all the public and state schools that our students are going to.
For medical school or law school.
But that's for medical school. And for law school, I know at least Calvin College, University now, they had a 100% acceptance rate at top law schools, which is better than virtually any secular college or university out there. In addition, if you look at polls like U.S. News and World Report, Princeton Review, they regularly score the top Christian colleges: Wheaton, Westmont, Calvin, Houghton, Baylor, and so on, above many of the schools that our students are choosing here in Colorado. So the fact of the matter is, the people who need to know that some of these schools are just top-notch academically.
Yeah. So you don't have to necessarily choose.
No.
And one of the things that's become increasingly, I think, prevalent is your undergraduate institution is just less important. I know that sounds weird, but than your graduate institution.
That's right.
If you're on a track that requires a graduate degree, the name of the second institution in terms of pedigree is actually more important than the first. And we all have friends who have made transitions. They've gone to a lower ranked undergrad, and then they go to a really high ranked law school or med school or graduate program or something along those lines. And
well, that brings up another thing that I like to point out to students, which is unless you're going to go to a seminary, chances are, and many of our students are looking for double degrees. They're going to be going on to get a master's or a PhD or a doctorate, law degree. Chances are you are not going to go to a Christian institution for your graduate degree. So the next 4 years are your sort of last chance to sit under Christian professors who can teach their subject matter from a place of faith and help you to understand your major, your interest from a place of faith. And if you have questions, these are the best people to ask. And you won't find that at a secular college or university. Also, I see that many of our students become believers here at Valor. And I know part of our motto is, to transform the world for Christ. And our students, many of them are really new in their faith. And they need another 4 years to really get a strong foundation. Because when they get out into a job or when they get out into graduate school, they will be on the front lines and they will experience opposition, and they will have plenty of opportunity to suffer for their faith. But why not take these 4 years and sit under, as I said, some of the best thinkers of our generation, and to learn about your subject matter from that perspective. And then you have that for the rest of your life. I have to say, I was a philosophy and English double major at Wheaton College. And some of the things I learned from my professors there, I teach every semester. They undergird my hermeneutics and my philosophy of teaching and reading and writing and so on. And I'm just so grateful for those wonderful minds that poured into me. So it's just bearing fruit over and over and over and over again. And I'd love to see that happen for our students.
That's great. I think about this when teaching was a bigger part of my job. I would say, I don't even care if you remember that this came from me, but 10 years down the road, when you're contemplating marriage or a change in career or whatever, I hope there's some light bulb that goes off of these spiritually formative truths that you acquired somewhere along the way. And so 4 more years of reinforcement of those things is a really powerful. I love how you pointed out, the slings and arrows of the world are coming. Yeah. You're not going to avoid those forever, but to march off into that willingly when there's maybe an opportunity for something else. We only have time for one more question. So I want to focus. I know a lot of the listeners and watchers of this are parents here. How can our parents at Valor Christian, how can they help prepare their students for spiritually prepare them before they step foot onto college campus? And we can broaden the lens here. This can be if they're going to a secular school or to a Christian school. But how can our families? What are some of the best things they can do to help make sure their kids are ready for even some of that appropriate? I love the way you said that earlier. That there is some developmentally appropriate drift that happens, and how can our families set up their children well for that?
Yeah, that's a great question. First, I would say that parents should, along with their students, pray. Pray for God's will. I don't think that God is calling every single student to a Christian college campus. I know He has purposes, that are individual to each student. However, I do believe that God has a good plan for every single student. And it's not so much that we have to find out, does this school have this major, or is this school near my grandparents, or do I like the weather at this school? I mean, students choose schools for all kinds of crazy reasons. But is this the school that God wants me to attend? Because if we feel like we've sort of connected with God's will for us, then whether we go to a state school, a private secular school, a Christian school, what have you, we're in the right place, and God will guide us and protect us and grow us. I would say that parents who have students who are going off to secular colleges and universities, state schools, to be aware, ask around, find out what dorm life is like, and do your best to kind of mitigate the worst things. Maybe find an honors dorm that your student can be part of. They tend to be a little less...
A little calmer.
A little calmer.
Yeah.
A little less Animal House. But also help your student to get involved day one when you register, go into that room where they have all the clubs, looking for students to join. There will be at all the colleges and universities, there will be some sort of Christian organization, Campus Crusade for Christ InterVarsity, what have you, and have them try them out, try them all, see which one you like the best, and look for Bible studies on your floor. Find other believers. And stay in touch with your student. Students, they like to think, oh, I'm going off. I'm going to be my own person now. I don't need my parents hovering around. But I think students actually, a lot of them do feel lonesome, especially on secular campuses. And so, to be in touch, to go visit, to have your student home as much as possible. And then, so that's the advice I would give for parents who know that their students are going off to someplace where it's not a place of faith, and perhaps similar kind of advice for students going off to Christian colleges. Okay, don't just sit back and expect, hey, I'm going to be fed here. Be proactive. Find the Bible studies and get into a church. Can I say that for both groups?
Yes.
Yeah, we need all kinds of levels of community.
Not just parachurch, other college
Right.
kids.
Yes.
Go to a church with old
Yes.
people
Right.
with little kids, like the range of
Yes.
human life.
Yes, indeed. Yes, I often point my students to Christ. He had a synagogue that he went to. Right, he said, as was his custom, he was there on the Sabbath. But he also had his 12. And then he had his inner circle, Peter, James, and John. And we need those levels, all of us, I think, need those levels of community. So find a church. If the first one you go to that you don't like, and by the way, you probably won't, because it's not going to be like your church at home. It's just not. But just keep looking around till you find a place where you're comfortable. And then meet the older people. They'll invite you over for dinner. Get to know them. Become a part of that community. And then find your 12, find your small group, find a Bible study or a fellowship group that you can go to regularly and grow with and learn with. And then find that Peter, James, and John, those three. And at the end of the day, when Jesus was on the cross, it was only John, as far as we know, that was there. So you got to have your one person who's always going to be there for you and always have your back. So don't be complacent. We've got to look for that all that community. But Jesus has shown us. He's shown us the way. And so let's follow him and be in community like he was. Probably the best thing we can do for our thriving, and no matter what college we go to.
Yeah, well, that is a fitting word to end on, to model ourselves on Christ and not. I love that. Don't be complacent. Go seek this out. The best thing I did in college, by God's grace, was join a community church, because I went to my parachurch leader and asked him a question about dating. And then I realized, you're like 2 years older than me. Why am I asking you about this? I need to go find some married guy and talk to him about that.
Yeah.
And it was great. And so, Kristine, thank you so much for the time. There's a
pleasure.
lot more that we could talk about and cover. There's going to be some information in the show notes,
I
some
will,
statistics and links and stuff like that our listeners can check out. But just appreciate your passion for this and your long service to our school.
Oh, thank you so much, Toby. Appreciate you.
Thank you for joining us on The Cross in the Classroom, educating with eternal values. We hope today's conversation inspired and encouraged you. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and stay connected with the Valor Christian High School community. Keep living out faith, learning with purpose, and growing in grace. Until next time.